We want to turn now to the latest from Ukraine. The long standoff at that steel plant in Mariupol now coming to an end as Ukraine surrendered control to Russia, allowing hundreds of its fighters to leave that devastated complex. More than 200 soldiers, some seriously injured, were evacuated yesterday to Russian-controlled territories. Ukraine's military says, per an agreement with Moscow, those soldiers eventually will return to Ukrainian-held areas. President Volodymyr Zelensky says the move was to, quote, save the lives of our boys. Ukrainian officials say they still are working to rescue the remaining soldiers, although it is unclear how many more remain inside. The evacuation of the fighters marks the end of the longest and fiercest resistance of the war so far. Meanwhile, the United States Senate soon could give final approval to a massive $40 billion aid package to Ukraine after voting overwhelmingly yesterday to advance it out of debate. The 81-11 vote sets up a final vote later this week. All no votes came from Republicans. The package passed the House with a significant majority last week, but was stalled in the upper chamber after objections from Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell pushed for the passage of the bill on Sunday after meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky in Kyiv. According to the New York Times, hours after that meeting, McConnell offered a strong counter-argument to Republican isolationists who have questioned the U.S. sending another aid package to Ukraine. This is not some handout, Mr. McConnell declared in comments that just as easily could have been directed at lawmakers he leads, writes the Times. It is important for the United States to help. It's important for the free world to help. It's important for the Ukrainians to win, and hopefully not many members of my party will choose to politicize this issue. A quote from Mitch McConnell. So, Joe, that's a direct shot, of course, from Mitch McConnell to Rand Paul and to many other members of his House constituency who say, why are we sending all this money to Ukraine when we've got all these problems at home? The package is going to pass, but there is a group of Republican holdouts that McConnell was speaking to directly yesterday.
Yeah, there certainly was. And obviously, isolationism has been a growing trend in the Republican Party for some time. Donald Trump, of course, hated NATO. He hated that the United States would have to defend other countries if they were drawn into war. He tried to destroy NATO. You had staff members chasing him around Europe when he was going from meeting to meeting, trying to get him to say that he actually would, the United States would be there for other members of NATO. Eventually, they forced him to say something. But there's no doubt he was an isolationist. He pulled troops out of Syria, 2,500 troops. It was tragic. He was always skeptical of expanding NATO. And so, Ed Luce, obviously, Mitch McConnell's comments, very important to the Republicans in the Senate and to the Republicans in the House as well, talking about the benefits of the United States supporting Ukraine. And I found it interesting. We're going to talk about this Russian television commentary in a little bit. But I found it very interesting that just as Vladimir Putin's mouthpieces on Russian television love Fox News, they love playing Fox News clips all the time, they also noted that it was Rand Paul that was doing Russia's bidding, that was doing Vladimir Putin's bidding, but said, well, we can't count on him much longer. They're probably going to be able to roll him.
Yeah, I mean, Rand Paul, as you know, is warning about the inflationary impact of this bill, which, somebody who works for a financial newspaper, is laughable. There is no empirical basis in that. But, yeah, they're paying very close attention in Russia to this Lend-Lease bill because they know that $40 billion in, Ukrainian currency is a lot of weapons, a lot of support, a lot of sustenance for a country that is gaining in confidence and that is preparing a major counteroffensive in the east to try and dislodge some of Russia's gains there. So $40 billion, we're beginning to talk real money here. This is an extraordinary act by the United States.
It really is. A retired Russian colonel is giving an honest and damning assessment of Russia's performance in Ukraine, appearing on state television yesterday as part of a panel. He said Russia's invasion of Ukraine is not going the way the Kremlin is portraying it. He also said the global isolation his country is facing is more daunting than Russian leaders are letting on. The colonel downplayed President Vladimir Putin's threats against Finland, calling on the Russian president to avoid, quote, saber rattling over its application to join NATO. He said it's such a poor tactic that it's almost, quote, amusing. The former colonel also urged viewers to not accept the Russian state's narrative about the war. He criticized the logistical failures of the Russian military on the ground and dismissed Russian claims of low morale in the Ukrainian army. He said Russians should not, quote, take information tranquilizers. Ed Luce, you know, that seems like perhaps somebody's point of view on Russian state television and not something that came from above. That seems pretty damning toward Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, and the fact that, you know, that this guy's got standing.
Right.
He's not a peacenik.
What do you make of this?
I think it's just, it's a sign that Putin isn't controlling the narrative at home. I mean, it's clear that the broadcast is generally censored. It's generally propaganda. Print has been a bit more freer in Russia. But what most people see has been Goebbels-esque in terms of the pipeline of lies about Ukraine and about this denazification campaign. So the fact that you've got somebody this respected, and he is, you know, I've asked about him, he is considered to be a pretty important, credible figure, can say this, is, I think, a measure of Putin's lack of control over the narrative, even with all the propaganda he controls.
Susan Page, is that what you're finding?
Ed, can you believe this is where we are after more than 3 months of war, that we're in a situation where Ukraine is getting some real money because they've earned it, because they've shown they can stand up to the Russians. Putin is being, in effect, criticized by a respected analyst on his own TV show. Sweden and Finland are joining NATO. I mean, this is not the war that we expected to have.
No, it's not. And I will say, Joe, was the explanation for Sweden and Finland joining NATO apparently some needed. I was watching lots of different types of coverage last night, and there were all these damning questions as to how in the world they could be allowed to join NATO, because this, of course, will create a bigger problem.
Well, I mean, my God. My God.
I know.
Finland and Sweden and NATO. Finland with an 860-mile border with Russia. Finland with a great military. Sweden with a great professional military. The coverage, the protection they cover for the Baltic states that are on the front lines and have been fearing Putin's wrath for years now.
And watching
but look at
Ukraine.
Finland again. It is not only do they have an 860-mile border with Russia, they're also a couple of hundred miles away from St. Petersburg. It's extraordinary, and it is a defensive coalition. We've said it time and time again. It has always been a defensive coalition.